But right now it is Tuesday. We are approaching 10 to 10, which means it is time for Hidden Histories. We do this every week where we look back at an episode or a person or an event that you may not know much about but has an absolutely great story behind it. And as always, our guide bringing us through Hidden Histories is Donal Fallon, the historian and the author of the Come Here To Me blog. How are you, Donal?
It's nice to be back. The weeks fly by, don't they?
They do fly by. It's a nice part of a Tuesday when we see you coming through the door. Today you're going to tell us about the day the Book of Kells was nearly stolen.
Indeed. No, it's a great story. One of our national treasures. And I suppose we all know about it, but we don't tend to know much. We all know of the Book of Kells, and we don't tend to know much about it. We tend to leave it to the tourists to go in and have a look at it. A friend of mine in the walking tour business, he describes it as the greatest anticlimax in Irish tourism. And I have to say, I disagree. I think it's a beautiful book. An illuminated Latin text of the four Gospels, dating back to about the year 800. It's been here in Dublin since the 1650s. And incredibly, in the late 1960s, there was an attempt to steal it by a maverick member of the IRA.
Now, just to be clear, first of all, there's the book and the harp, is there?
Indeed. When you visit the old library of Trinity College Dublin, tourists, they go in, they pay the admission fee, they look at the Book of Kells, they go, that's great, and they leave again. But there's quite a lot else to see in the old library of Trinity College Dublin. And I think one of the most interesting objects in there is the Brian Boru harp. A beautiful musical object, centuries old. The Guinness corporate logo and the emblem of the Irish state are both taken from this beautiful harp in the old library of Trinity College.
OK, so who stole what?
Well, in the late 60s, there's a proposal made within the IRA by a maverick member that the movement should steal the Book of Kells and attempt to ransom it back to Trinity College Dublin. The individual involved was an ex-British soldier, recruited in 1967. He became a training officer in the Dublin Brigade of the IRA. And I first stumbled upon this guy in a brilliant book, The Lost Revolution, where it was said that during early 1969, this individual raised the idea of stealing the book, holding it for ransom, but he found no support. So on the 24th of March 1969, he broke into the college himself, and unable to gain access to the Book of Kells, he stole the Brian Boru harp instead. A few weeks later, he contacted the college and demanded £20,000.
Now, just to trace the history of the book itself, it is actually the Bible, is it? Written in a Latin text.
Yeah,
is that the content
and
of it?
In a sense, it's stolen goods. Because it likely began its life not here in Ireland, but in the Iona Monastery off the Scottish coast. And it was probably lost by that monastery or taken from there because of Viking raids about the year 800. So in a sense, we shouldn't have it at all. But this IRA man anyway had ambitions of taking it and stealing it. When he couldn't get it, he makes off with the harp. There's a scandal at the time. This is the media ask, how in the name of God could someone break in?
We're talking 1969.
69. How in the name of God can someone break into the library where the Book of Kells is kept, where this harp is kept? And the Irish press run a beautiful front page picture of the harp, and they quote the college authorities appealing to the person just to handle it with extreme care because it's very fragile. They worry that it'll break.
And did it receive a lot of international attention?
It was a massive story right across the world. Of course, Irish America in particular, they'd have this great romantic idea about the Trinity Library and the Book of Kells and the harp. The Milwaukee Journal proclaimed the harp to be an astonishing 1,300 years old, for example. I don't know where they got that from. The British and the American media ran with the story as well. In particular, they were interested in the fact that the harp had been the inspiration for the corporate logo of a certain brand of stout since the 1870s. So there was a strong dimension. It was often talked about the Guinness harp that was stolen, and a Guinness spokesperson was quoted in the New York Times as saying they hoped it would be recovered. OK, so he steals it. Then, did he stick to the plan and contact the university? He contacts the university, who are hugely embarrassed, actually, and deny initially that there's any discussion going on between them and the robber. It's massively embarrassing. There's questions asked internally how such a library could be broken into with relative ease. The university secretary is contacted, and the whole thing plays out in a really bizarre fashion. One journalist says it was like something out of a James Bond novel. There was a threat made via a ransom note that unless money was left in a dustbin at Bull Wall at 1 a.m. on the 17th of April, the instrument would be destroyed. So there were 11 Garda cars out at Bull Wall, and when a man was seen to approach this particular bin, there was a decision made to move in. There was a very high profile end to the whole story.
Right, and they got the book back. They didn't pay for it.
Ultimately, they got it back. A young fella from Drimna pleaded guilty to receiving the harp knowing it was stolen. And he recovered it. He brought the Trinity authorities out to the beach and they dug it up. But what was mad about the whole story, the individual who actually stole the harp, he was later revealed to be something of an agent provocateur. And he had been in contact with Gardaí for several years, passing on information and other figures within the Republican movement. So the whole thing was a bizarre story, and Trinity got their book back. Now, interestingly, the IRA never got the Book of Kells. The people in Kells want it back. There's a movement, I just stumbled across, ourbookofkells.com, Kells people who are arguing that with the book bound in 4 volumes and only 2 on display in Trinity, they're saying it's about time Kells got at least 1 of the volumes back.
So what you're saying is that there are 2 volumes of the 4 that are just not on display?
Since the 50s, it's bound in 4 volumes. And
it sounds like a bit of a dog in the manger attitude by Trinity in terms of why not put all 4 on display at any one point in time?
Yeah, indeed. When you pay in, you'll see 2. If there's 2 locked away in storage, I say give 1 to the Scottish Museum, given the likely origins of the book, and give 1 to the town of Kells.
Yeah, I know. It's a huge... There's a museum in Enniscorthy and there was also one at Johnstown Castle, and it was a huge source of grievance that there was things in the basement not on display at all of artefacts from Wexford and Enniscorthy that they would like to display, and they do have a dog in the manger attitude. Yeah. Now, maybe it's for security reasons or whatever, but you'd think you'd want as many people as possible to see these historic...
Given that it was only taken to Dublin for safekeeping almost 400 years ago, I can understand why they were being in their bonnet about it.
OK, as always, a star performer, Donal Fallon of Come Here To Me blog, with his hidden history this week on the attempt to steal the Book of Kells. Thank you, Donal.